You're listening to episode 824 of the Father Bills Podcast. Welcome back. Well, this week I offered Mass at a different parish due to the COVID situation in our area. Two of our priests were down with COVID and couldn't serve Mass over the weekend, and so we did a lot of scrambling around to figure out how to do the coverage. So I ended up going over to Shepherd of the Valley Catholic Church in Central Point, which is wonderful. I love going over there. Their church was built before ours, and we used a lot of their ideas and structure and planning to make our new church that we commissioned in 2018. So it's a joy to see that, to be there, to kind of see the beginnings of what we did on our own. Now, as I offer this homily, you notice the sound is a little different, a little more echo. I'm using my iPhone. I just placed it on the Ambo since there's not a recording system that I can use for my homily, and so it might sound a bit different. But nonetheless, this is the homily entitled Being Part of the Body, given on the third Sunday in Ordinary Time, 2022. Our bodies are a gift from God and are intrinsically a part of God's plan, male and female. Therefore, the body is not something to be ashamed of. And since God is the creator of the human body, he also gave us a vocation, a calling that is congruent with our bodies. Therefore, when he created humanity, he said from the very beginning, it was very good. So we need to be cautious when our thoughts and actions contradict this fundamental truth. God gave us these bodies, and these bodies are good. As St. Paul reminds us today, we sometimes consider certain part of our bodies to be less honorable or weaker than others. However, St. John Paul II reminded us in his Theology of the Body that such perceptions are due to sin that we think they are less honorable. St. Paul makes clear that truthfully, God has given greater honor to those parts we think are less honorable so that there will be no division in the body. And it is, in fact, those special parts of our bodies that are responsible for participating in God's powerful and miraculous ability to create. Let's just say that my elbow cannot create new life, or my foot cannot create new life. It might be able to kick a field goal, but that's about it. My eyes and my ears do not create new life. Instead, we commonly cover those parts of our bodies that behold the deepest power which allow us to co-create with Christ. Further in St. Paul's writing, he recognizes that our bodies are made of many parts, as we heard today, and that one part cannot be another part, nor is less than any other part. The miraculous complexity and the complementarity of the parts working together is what makes our bodies so amazing. What affects one part of the body can affect our whole body. Another way of understanding this, using a negative example, is when one part of our body is hurt, the rest of the whole body suffers. Just think, when was the last time you had a paper cut on your finger, or maybe on your pinky finger? Didn't you just your whole body just shudder? Of course it did. We are one body with many parts, all of which God designed for a magnificent purpose. We need to understand that the body is a unity of many parts, and even more importantly, that those parts that God gives greater honor to are the very ones that distinguish us as male and female, and subsequently as man and woman. Yes, our gender is determined by biology, not psychology nor feelings. For the root word gender comes from the word to generate. A male is a man by the way he generates offspring, and a female is a woman in the way she generates offspring. So this unity of the body comes with many parts. And all the parts are bound by our God-given genetics, which defines our sex and gender as a unity. This fundamental truth, unfortunately, has become confused in an attempt to redefine our nature of what it means to be a man or woman in our culture. The complementarity of the bodies of man and woman require the participation of those parts that God has given greater honor than the other parts as in our body. As such, we need to treat them with respect and dignity. And it is why those, when they are violated, that there is such great harm done to our whole being. And by using those parts to show love, as God has intended, He brings us closer to heaven while we are still here on earth. What do I mean? Well, we all know that God calls us to love. It is a commandment. It's not a recommendation. But love isn't merely about our desires and feelings. It isn't a free-for-all. We don't get to make it up. Love is divinely ordered. Love is divinely ordered. Think about that. Love has an order? Well, let's just put it in the negative. If you disorder love, watch the consequences. Watch the destruction in your life fall apart and the people hurt around you. On the contrary, when we sacrifice ourselves, and of course, we have the greatest image of that in our crucifix today, watch how glorious God works in our midst. So we are not to make this up. It is divinely ordered. Our potential to love as God loves is stamped into our being. God created us so that the one flesh union gives us an opportunity to experience the ecstasy of heaven. That may be a brain buster for you. That's okay. Just sit back. Here we go. In other words, our bodies as male and female are meant to help us know that there is more to life than this, that heaven is real, and that the lives of husbands and wives are meant to tell each other about their deepest yearning and hope. That yearning and hope find their fulfillment in heaven. And all good and holy things here on earth are mere foreshadowings of heaven. They're pointing us to heaven. I don't know about you, but heaven sounds pretty exciting. Remember that our bodies were given to us by God. Male and female, He created us. Why did He do it this way? Well, it is wrapped in mystery, but here's a thought. So that the complementarity, the differences of the sexes, can imitate something of God's love for us. Now, some have attempted to confuse or negate our differences in this respect. This is against God's plan for humanity and for us individually. We are being called to celebrate who we are called to be, our vocations, which are stamped in our bodies. Nowhere is this more true than in the sacrament of marriage. In your one flesh union as husband and wife, the perfection, the ecstasy of God's plan of love can be seen and experienced. Yes, in that one flesh union, you may touch heaven, the infinite. And isn't it amazing that those parts which we often consider less honorable are necessary for such one flesh union? I mean, really, how many times do we come up to our loved one and rub elbows? We might, bump fists today because of coronavirus, but not even close, right? Husbands and wives. So isn't it amazing that those parts, and only those parts, are the most key parts to co-create another person into being with God? Sadly, sometimes humanity has philosophically and now physically tried to create ourselves into something that we are not originally created to be by God, from whom in the beginning He has made us, thus thwarting God's original call for us. As such, There has been a temptation to simulate another body, which is not our true selves. Some will go to such a great length to surgically alter parts so that they can further simulate what they want them to be. But genetics do not lie, and we cannot change those things. And those are the fundamental realities of who we are. Others may tragically suffer from disordered perceptions about their bodies, such as when they look into a mirror, they perceive themselves to be fat, when actually they are so skinny that they have seriously endangered their health. What is the loving thing to do? Well, the loving thing to do is not to encourage them to continue their behavior and to harm themselves, but to accompany them, to help them seek out professional help. This is what is called body dysmorphic disorder. There are many other kinds of dysmorphias, all of which harm our ability to perceive and understand how our bodies were created to be and how those bodies are meant to fulfill God's plan in our lives. The source of these disorders is not in our bodies, but in our minds, our thinking. It is again from St. Paul in his letter to the Romans chapter 12 that he encourages us in this way. He says, "Do not conform yourselves to this world, but be transformed by renewal of your minds." So you see, our bodies, as God has created them, should be lifted up and not damaged or disordered so that we can somehow make some sense of ourselves. The confusion that some people struggle with, especially in our current times, does a great disservice to the truth that God has made us to be. And it will continue to confuse them as they disintegrate their body and soul. Remember that as human beings, we are not just bodies. As persons, we are bodies and souls. And our souls are so matched with our bodies that one could even say that the soul is the form of our body, according to our catechism, paragraph 365. Meaning that our souls are matched or intimately paired with our bodies. When we so dramatically deform our body away from God's plan, we distance our souls from our bodies psychologically, spiritually, and metaphysically. And further confusion and suffering continues and may even increase. What we are called to do is to celebrate God's gift of our bodies and do what we can through ordinary means to maintain a healthy body until natural death. The goal is to be a person of integrity, to seek out whatever help we can so that we will find the harmony in our minds to what our body is already telling us. Because our bodies are made in the likeness and image of God. So let us take care of our bodies. Let us remember that our calling by God is intimately tied with who we are, who God made us to be, body and soul. We must also remember that our lives are not our own, but a gift from God. Let us celebrate this fundamental truth and honor the reality that from the earliest stages of our lives, our identities were given to us, not chosen by us. Who we are was given by God as a precious gift, as a son or daughter of God from the earliest moments of our existence. And we know from the scriptures that God knew us before we ever came to be in our mother's womb. Clearly, he had a plan even before conception for each one of us. This truth is confirmed by our baptism, and is why on this day so many march to end abortion. For we are true human beings in the womb, bodies and souls, with dignity and honor and the right to life. The great adventure of life is not about being the captain of our own lives or our own ship, as we hear in literature, and choosing to do whatever we want, but rather in recognizing the great gift God has given you and in return giving yourself away for the good of others. Don't hoard your gifts. Let them go and give them away. The goal in life is not to determine what you want to be, but to listen to who God has made you to be. For he is the author, not yourself. I speak for myself in this regard because when I would say, what do I want to do? Well, I want to be a couch potato watching football. But I'm not called to do that. I'm called to be a priest. And that was confirmed by many interviews and 7 years of seminary and formation and walking through all my baggage, asking the question, God, what do you want from me? Regardless of what I think. Because see, God's ways are better than ours. He is the one from whom we have our value, not in our own accomplishments. He has made us to live with him forever in heaven, not by doing it my way, as Frank Sinatra opined. I'm always struck by that when people play that at a funeral. I don't think my way is going to get me to heaven. I think God's way will. So rejoice and do not let your hearts be troubled. We all have struggles, and we all struggle to be people of integrity. But look to your body for a sign. God's ways are above our ways. His adventures are greater than our own feeble plans. And only in our Lord is found our true vocation, through which we will find ultimate happiness, prefigured here on earth and fulfilled in heaven.
Thank you again for listening to this episode of the Father Bill's podcast. Now, if you want to learn more about some of the stuff that I spoke about in the homily, basically you're looking for what's called the Theology of the Body. And you can just Google that. You can also Google it on, or go to Amazon. You can go to YouTube and search it. There's great stuff by Christopher West. Jason Everett is also awesome. There's several websites where you can go to learn about the theology of the body, even a Wikipedia article about it. John Paul II spoke 2/3 of everything that was ever said really by the church and regarding sex and marriage, and you can search for his books. One would be Love and Responsibility, and he really reflects once again about Humani Vitae, but also the book that's really the theology of the body by him, and it's called Man and Woman He Created Them, a theology of the body. Now, if you have any other comments or questions, you can just go to my website, fatherbill.org. That's FRBILL.org. And there you can see my social media connections. You can send me an email, and you can even see some of the other podcasts I do. And check those out as well. There's one on the Pilgrimage Cast about going on a pilgrimage to Rome, and there's another one on liturgy called The Mysteries of the Mass. So check it out. And go ahead and give me an email or whatever you need to have any comments or to chat with me. In the meantime, may God bless you, stay safe, and I'll catch you when I come back again next week. Bye-bye.